everybody. It's Monday, July 13th, and that means it's time for another episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. I'm one of your co-hosts, Cecilia Sapp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips. We provide 501c consulting, association management services, and support for distinctive projects. We are also the sponsor for this weekly web series where we discuss topics of importance to the 501c community. I'm here today with my co-host, Agnes Amos Coleman, and our guest, Bruce Rosenthal, who's also a member of the Rogue Tulips Consultants Network. So Agnes, would you like to introduce yourself and say hello?
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience. My name is Agnes Amos Coleman. I'm an author and a consultant. Over to you, Cecilia.
That's great. Thank you, Agnes. And today's topic is part of our July Freedom series, which is inspired by the American Independence Day, July 4th. And so our guest, Bruce, is going to talk about freedom from preconceptions of corporate partnerships. So Bruce, let me throw it over to you. Say hello to our audience and kind of frame the conversation for us.
Sure. Thanks, Cecilia and Agnes. Great to be here. Yeah, I found with corporate partnerships, many organizations have done sponsorships the same way for so many years, and companies have gotten used to being sponsors the same way for many years. We think that is the only way it is. And I've seen changes coming about in that value proposition for companies as sponsors, for associations for a number of years. And actually the pandemic has just kind of ratcheted those changes up significantly. So that sorts of trends we were seeing, organizations needing more revenue, needing more content for their members, companies looking for more value, ROI value. If that was true 4 months ago as it was, it's true to a much greater extent today because of the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. So Bruce, do you see a lot of people still trying to do in the aftermath of the pandemic the same kind of thing with their sponsors, like, oh, give us a lot of money and we'll slap your logo on a board, on a sign?
Some organizations are basically looking at the same sort of logo placements for their virtual conferences. What many organizations are doing, however, is they're actually refunding the money to their sponsors when their conferences are canceled, or rolling that money over into next year. And basically the associations are taking a hands-off approach and saying, we'll just catch up with you folks later. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a loss to the association and a loss for the members, because many of these companies would like to continue to be engaged, would like to be front and center. It might be more of a social responsibility message now than a sales pitch, but in many trades and professions, as businesses start to open up again and organizations start to open up again, and there will be purchasing, there may be some pent-up demand. So these companies have some great opportunities if they can be front and center as sponsors in the coming months.
Well, and I know that associations are controlling how they do things right now, but Bruce, what advice would you give a corporate partner in this time for them to be proactive and reach out to some of these associations?
I think it'd be great for companies to reach out to their key contact at the association and begin a conversation. Or that can work the other way of the association reaching out to the companies. And of course, now we always want to start off with, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How's your business or organization doing? But also to begin to say, is your company, is your organization up and running? What are the plans? What are the next steps? Because I think it's also important for associations and organizations to engage companies as partners. And I think in some instances, associations have sent an email to their corporate partners along with all the other attendees and just said, conference canceled, we'll give you an update later. And these companies are like, I thought we were kind of the leaders here. We were a $30,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 sponsor of the conference. Why didn't we have a heads up on this? So I think much can be gained on both sides by a conversation to talk about mutual goals. Not the sales pitch from the company, but how the companies can be positioned as helping, be positioned as thought leaders to benefit the organization and its members.
So Agnes, you have a strong background in event management, and that means that you've done a lot of work with corporate partners. So what are your thoughts on this topic?
Thank you, Cecilia. I definitely want to add to what Bruce has said. I think I would even go further to engaging your partners on your strategic process, the strategic planning process for the organization. More so now after post-COVID, because prior to COVID-19, there's been a lot of struggle in actually getting partners, corporate partners, to cough up the money anyways, because they want you to show where the value is coming from. More so now, you need them to come to the table, to engage them as partners, to engage them as part of the process and as part of the solution finding. And in doing that, what that does is that it presents value for them. It feels like they really have a skin in the game. There is an opportunity here for them to collectively see how they can impact your membership and how your membership can impact their business. So everybody wins in this process. And I would say to our community, our 501c community, that the silver lining here is the opportunity to align with your global partners, to engage them, not just as, vending machine, but also as an opportunity to come to the table and discuss our strategic partner. How do we move forward? One of the questions that you and I, or some of the thought process that we've shared before, is that the COVID has really presented a situation where, you either partner or you lose business. You either stay in business through partnership, through collaboration, or you will not exist anymore. And I think that it would be wise for our community to start to look at their corporate partners as an opportunity to collaborate with them, partner with them, and even engage them to find solutions as well.
And I think that's an excellent point. And that's always been my attitude, whether I've been a consultant or a staff member in an association, is what are they getting out of it? And I think that's really what we have to ask all the time. And I think, as you both have pointed out, in a post-pandemic world, I think that has been demonstrated more strongly. People must collaborate. They must work together. Nobody can be shunted off to the sidelines anymore at this point. And as we all know, being part of the Rogue Tulips Network, that's one of our drivers. Collaboration is going to make us all more successful. So throwing this back to you, Bruce, when we're looking at value is a subjective thing. So what's valuable to one person isn't valuable to another person. So what kind of advice could you give to an association or other types of nonprofits to help them define that value for each corporate partner that they work with?
Well, the emphasis is on that word you just used, Cecilia, each. It is different for each company. And in the same way that a marketing agency offers a different set of services for each client, a caterer offers a different set of menus and amenities for each client, each company has a different value proposition, and those value propositions can change year to year, and they may be different now based on coronavirus. So generally, companies, I find from my research and interviews with corporate partners, are looking for three things. Of course, it is around business development. Secondly, it's around the unique sorts of brand differentiation that sponsors can get as compared to the dozens or hundreds of other companies that are in the exhibit hall or are business members of the association. But the third component, and this touches on something that Agnes mentioned, is around thought leadership. Companies want to know, as part of that brand differentiation, how is their company different than all the others? And what sort of expertise, research, knowledge, white papers, perspective, data, credibility can those companies bring to the organization? Because as we know with coronavirus, there are unfortunately going to be organizations that are going to need to cut back a little bit, aren't going to be able to provide all the same services, might even need to change their staff lineup. Companies can help fill that gap. And in many cases, companies would really like to be part of that conversation. And this fits right into positioning them as thought leaders and distinct from the other companies that are involved with the organization. So it can definitely be a win-win-win for the organization and its members, as well as the companies.
Well, Agnes, what are your thoughts on that line of discussion?
I also like to take a view that, less is more. In those days, we always like to gather a lot of corporate partners, 10, 15. We give them different levels. You're a gold sponsor, you're a platinum sponsor. The view that I'm taking strategically now is that if you have one or two, global business partner that's going to partner with you, they can, if you engage them in your strategic process, if you bring them to the table as a thought leader in helping them find solution, those 1 or 2 partners can actually carry the cost of everything, because there are big companies out there that you could, they could say, we're willing to give your organization $1 million. For $1 million, this is what we're going to get. This is what we are expecting. This is the value we're going to bring to your to your membership, and this is the value your membership is going to bring to us. And I would rather take that view and work with very few partners, who are willing, to collaborate with us, find solution with us, rather than trying to fill the gap with 50, 60 corporate partners in one conference, and you're modeling the waters and trying to have that fulfillment from a conference organizer perspective, because you have to, you really have to fulfill your promise. And that could be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And then you lose that value, and the partners lose the value in the process as well.
Right. That's a really good point, Agnes. And I had worked for an organization a number of years ago that went from 50 companies in 4 categories to 20 companies in 2 categories, and it was revenue neutral. Mm-hmm. Because those 20 companies were willing to pay more for that exclusivity and the higher level benefits. But many companies, and I've had the opportunity as a consultant to organizations and doing confidential interviews with corporate partners to kind of get a look behind that curtain. And it's astounding the companies that are investing or have in the past invested upwards of $500,000 to $1 million when I say, does the organization understand your business goals? And I'll get a response like, no, the organization never asked me my business goals. Mm-hmm. So that's not going well, because some of those same companies will say, oh, and the logo visibility, that's the least valuable part of it. Everybody knows our logo. That's, we've been a top level sponsor for years. Everybody knows who we are. We're really looking for more than that. And I had an instance a few months ago where a sponsor said, these are good questions about the value of sponsorship. And by the way, I have a meeting with the association staff in 2 weeks. If that doesn't go better, I'm probably out of here. Mm-hmm. And that was pre-coronavirus. So companies have choices. They have other outlets with social media, other ways to reach members. They would prefer to work with the association, but if the association won't work with them one-on-one, they will look at other options.
Well, and I think this is a great example of what I've come to think of as the tyranny of best practices. Because people look, what are the other associations doing? Oh, that's what they're doing. Oh, I'm going to do that because then I can say, well, it's what everybody else is doing, so it must be a best practice. But as we all know, best practices are not necessarily the best way to do something. So is it the best way? Or is it just what everybody else is doing? Like, I think all of our mothers have probably said to us at least once in our life, if everybody was jumping off of a bridge, would you jump too? Mm-hmm. And obviously no. But when I was briefly a CEO at a small healthcare association, I offered to do all kinds of stuff. I offered to do a henna tattoo on my bicep, if that's what would get people excited about participating in the meeting. So everybody may not be that committed to doing stuff for their corporate partners, but I think you've both hit on what brings us to the heart of making any relationship better, and that's asking the other person, what do you want out of it? And you've both got me thinking. And I'll throw it to Bruce first, and then Agnes, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this because we have about 3 minutes left. You both talked about strategy and strategic partners and strategic development. Is there a role for corporate partners in strategic planning development?
Sure, glad to jump in first. Absolutely. Companies have a wealth of information. And in fact, it's interesting because the members of an association are the same people who are the customers and clients of the companies. It is the same audience. Mm-hmm. So many companies that are doing research and development, that are doing their strategic planning, that are trying to figure out what staff they need, if they're in manufacturing, what do they need to tool up for in 2 years, they're doing all of that planning. So and they, in many cases, be very willing to sit down and share that with the association as part of a discussion. What does the association know? What changes have they seen in members' inclinations on education and training and public policy? So that sort of strategic collaboration, bringing all that information to the table and building something together, determining where the gaps are. Does the association have gaps? Does the company have gaps? And how can they come together? And the beauty of that for the association, the companies will pay for the privilege of being part of that discussion and part of that partnership. And one other point, this applies to associations of all sizes. And I know sometimes we think only the big associations, and they may not all be $1 million sponsors, but sometimes the smaller associations with a more niche audience are of more interest to a company than a huge association with a 10,000 person conference.
So Agnes, we're almost out of time. So can you quickly add your thoughts on that before we
Sure.
wrap up?
And my thought is totally agree with Bruce. I think the answer is absolutely yes, yes, yes. The corporate understand the organization's competitive landscape. They're able to help in the strategic process. They understand the landscape. They're able to help, and they add tremendous value to the table. We just need to have a paradigm shift here in seeing, the corporate partners. Sometimes we just see them as, oh no, we can't tell them everything because, our secret is not safe with them. No, 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 no. I think they have they really have a skin in the game. They understand the business landscape, and we will have tremendous value if we engage them more than we currently do.
Thank you very much for that. That's a great summary. And Bruce, as always, love having you on as a guest. Bruce, if people wanted to follow up with you directly, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. There's an organization that I founded a number of years ago called the Partnership Professionals Network that has a wealth of information about innovative corporate partnership programs, including a number of articles around coronavirus. And you can find that at partnershipprofessionals.network. And my contact information is on that website also.
That's great. Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Agnes. And thank you all for joining us this week for another episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. We hope that this will help you free yourself from preconceptions of all kinds, not just in relation to your corporate partnerships, because we create the world we're in. So you have the power to make choices and change your mind if you want to and try something different. Because as I've often said to people, if it doesn't work, just don't do it again. So on behalf of myself, Agnes, and Bruce, we're going to go rogue for this week. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips, you can check us out at roguetulips.com. We also encourage you to check out the 501c League, which is a virtual membership organization for everyone in the 501c community and the people who love them. You can check out the league at 501cleague.net. And as Agnes and I like to say, take 15 minutes and talk to somebody because you might learn something. So we're going rogue for this week all, but we'll see you next time. Bye.